That winter night, the smell of smoke wasn't just a nuisance, it was a harbinger. I was just a firefighter, one of many, with years of experience dealing with tragedies. I'd seen it all, or so I thought. But what happened on July 12th of that year would turn my life upside down and forever alter my perception of the unexpected. The siren wailed through the silence of the early morning, and the call was clear: a fire in a residential building, one of those old ones where fire spreads like a hungry predator. The image that came to mind was instantaneous: families sleeping, dreams shattered in ashes. But in that moment, something was different. A strange sensation, a chill that didn't come from the early morning chill, ran through me. There was a detail in the call that chilled my blood: possibly child trapped on the 7th floor. 7 floors of pure hell. When I arrived, the building was already engulfed in flames. People screamed at the windows, despair hanging in the air. Thick, black smoke billowed from the vents, like the building's lungs suffocating. But amidst the chaos, my eyes fixed on something. On the 7th floor, in a window barely visible through the smokescreen, a small hand waved frantically. A child, a girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, was there, alone. In that moment, I was no longer just a firefighter, a professional. I was a human being witnessing the horror. And I knew that girl needed me. But what I didn't know, and what would only be revealed much later, was that that small hand wasn't just waving for help, but for a truth no one could have imagined. And that truth was about to come to light, in a way that would challenge everything I knew. What would happen next would change not only that child's life, but mine as well, forever. The clock read 2:37 a.m. The street was blocked by fire engines and trucks, their lights flashing in a hypnotic, almost macabre rhythm. The fire howled, devouring wood and concrete, spreading a suffocating heat even from a distance. The air was thick with soot and the acrid smell of burning. My team and I were receiving final instructions. The Magirus ladders were already in place, but access was difficult. Our focus, at that moment, was the girl. Information was scarce, but the certainty that an innocent life was in danger drove us forward. It was an old building, with precarious wiring and a structure that wouldn't hold much longer. We had to be quick, surgical. My boss, Captain Almeida, a veteran with a voice hoarse from so many calls, gave me the direct order: "Captain Silva, you and your team. 7th floor. The child is the priority." My team, Sergeant Costa and Private Santos, were experienced men, but the tension was palpable in their eyes. We knew this would be a different mission. Captain Almeida handed me the building's blueprint, the red lines marking the highest-risk areas. The girl's apartment, number 703, was almost in the center of the inferno. Flames were already licking the exterior walls, and the sound of pops and smaller collapses echoed with each passing minute. I put on my mask, the filtered air relief, and felt the weight of the equipment, each item an extension of my responsibility. But the image of that small hand on the window wouldn't leave my mind. It was as if the girl were calling me directly, a desperate whisper amid the roar of the flames. And that was when the first obstacle presented itself. The main staircase was impassable, completely engulfed in smoke and flames. The only way out was via the emergency staircase at the back of the building. But access to it was through a narrow, already partially collapsed corridor. With every step, we felt the ground shake, the screams of those who managed to escape echoing, fueling our urgency. The 7th floor door, when we finally reached it, was jammed, hot to the touch, and smoke billowed from every crack. An invisible but powerful barrier between us and the child. I knew every second counted, and that what came next would require all our courage and skill. That girl's fate was in our hands, and the fire seemed to mock our resolve. We broke down the door to apartment 703. The heat that erupted was unbearable, even with protective gear. Visibility was near zero. The smoke was so thick I could barely see a hand in front of me. The flashlight on my helmet cut through the blackness, revealing only distorted shapes and dancing shadows. The smell of burning plastic and melted insulation assaulted my nostrils, even through my mask. I shouted, "Firefighters! Is anyone here?" My voice was drowned out by the roar of the fire, the crackling of wood, and the distant sound of shattering glass. Sergeant Costa and Private Santos swept the apartment, calling for the child. We began our systematic search, crawling across the floor, feeling every inch. The floor was hot, and we knew time was a relentless enemy. We had to act quickly. My mind raced, trying to predict where a child would hide. Under the bed. Inside the closet. The possibilities were numerous, but time was short. The furniture was on fire or completely destroyed, the apartment structure already compromised. The fire crackled, flames danced on the walls, and with every second, it felt like hell was approaching. My heart pounded in my chest, a drum of urgency. We needed to find her. Suddenly, I heard a faint cry. Barely audible, but it was there. It came from the room furthest back, the one most affected by the flames. Private Santos pointed his flashlight in that direction, and we saw a silhouette. It was her. The girl was huddled in a corner of the room, behind a burning mattress, hugging a nearly disfigured teddy bear. Her wide eyes, red with smoke, reflected the horror she was experiencing. She was shaking uncontrollably, a sound of muffled sobs coming from her mouth. She was in shock. I approached, trying to convey reassurance. "It's okay, little one. I'm Captain Silva. We've come to get you out of here." I held out my hand, but she recoiled, frightened, like a cornered animal. The distrust in her eyes was palpable, even amidst the fear. I understood that the trauma had already set in. The fire was spreading rapidly in that room, the flames coming dangerously close. We needed to act now. There was no more time for subtlety. What would happen next, to our surprise, would be more complex than we imagined. Rescuing the girl, who seemed within our grasp, was about to become an even greater challenge, a true test for our team. As I tried to calm the girl, the ceiling began to collapse in one of the adjacent rooms. A deafening crash. Chunks of plaster and wood fell, raising a cloud of dust and intensifying the smoke. A burning support beam collapsed right on our planned escape route, blocking the apartment's main exit. We were trapped. Captain Almeida, outside, on the radio, asked about our situation. "Captain Silva, what's the status?" "The fire is spreading fast." My voice, despite trying to remain calm, sounded strained. "We're trapped, Captain. Escape route blocked. We found the child, but we can't get out." The girl's heart was pounding, and her small arms clung tightly to mine, as if I were her last hope. She seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. I knew I needed to remain calm, not only for the team, but especially for her. Her breathing, close to my ear, was rapid and shallow. Sergeant Costa and Private Santos searched desperately for an alternative route as the fire advanced. The heat was almost unbearable, the humidity in the air evaporating in seconds. The flames danced around us, a deadly ballet that seemed to encircle us. It was then that Private Santos shouted, "Captain! The window! The floor below appears to be empty, and is there a tree branch strong enough to support a cable, perhaps?" I looked at the window. It was a considerable drop. About 6 stories. Impossible to descend with a child like that. But the idea of the branch. It might be a chance, if there were something to support us below. The tension intensified. With each passing second, we felt the structure of the building groan under the weight of the fire. The ground seemed to vibrate. Captain Almeida, on the radio, reported that the structure was severely compromised and that we would have to evacuate in a matter of minutes, before it was too late. There was no time to think about anything else. Sergeant Costa promptly grabbed the rescue rope, a sturdy rope made to support heavy weights. Using a hook, he tried to throw it to the branch. Once, twice, 3 times. The branch was high, and the wind, even inside the building, seemed to be conspiring against us. On the 3rd try, with adrenaline pumping through my veins, the hook caught. Momentary relief washed over us, but apprehension soon returned. The rope was secure, but what now? We would descend one by one, but the girl was terrified. What I didn't know was that, at that very moment, as we planned our improbable escape, a crucial piece of a much larger puzzle was about to emerge, hidden in the most unexpected details. And the next twist would completely change our understanding of that night. With the rope attached, I prepared to descend, but the girl refused to let go. She clung to my jumpsuit, crying and shaking. "Don't leave me. I'm scared. Don't leave me," she begged, sobbing. Her panic was understandable, but we didn't have time. Private Santos gently tried to pull her away from me, explaining that I needed to go first to ensure safety. She resisted, her eyes wide and filled with tears. Then, in her desperation, she reached out a small, crumpled hand. In the palm of her hand was a piece of paper. A drawing. It was a simple child's drawing, but what it depicted made me freeze. It was a drawing of a house on fire. But it wasn't just any house. It was that building. And next to it, with childlike features, were 2 figures, one of an adult in firefighter gear, me, and the other, smaller, her. But what made my eyes widen was the detail beside the figures. A man. A man on fire, almost like a ghost, standing, staring at the house. And that wasn't all. In the bottom corner, in a child's hesitant handwriting, was a word written, "Daddy." At that moment, I realized this wasn't just a drawing. It was a message. A clue. But a clue to what? I looked at Sergeant Costa, who had also seen the drawing. Our eyes met in a mixture of confusion and astonishment. The girl, her voice cracking, pointed to the drawing and said, with the cruel innocence of children, "He did it. He set the fire. My daddy." A shock ran down my spine. The adrenaline of the rescue mixed with a wave of disbelief. Her father, the man who was supposed to protect her? Was it possible? That small sheet of paper, scribbled with crayon, transformed the scene of a simple fire into something much darker, more disturbing. The fire I was there to fight, which had seemed like an accident, suddenly took on the air of a crime. There was no time to process. Flames licked at the window, the heat rose, and the building's structure groaned. We had to get out. Private Santos was the first to descend the rope, testing its safety. Sergeant Costa picked up the girl, protecting her as much as possible, and tied her to him with a makeshift safety harness so they could descend together. I would go last. As they descended, I looked once more at the drawing in my hands, now crumpled and damp with sweat. The image of Daddy in flames seemed to haunt me. What was behind that drawing? Who was this father? And why would he do something like that? I knew that the story of that night was far from over, and that the girl's revelation was just the tip of the iceberg. And that was when the biggest surprise of all came, something I never expected. We managed to get down safely. The girl, still in shock, was immediately attended to by paramedics. Before being taken to the ambulance, she looked at me with those wide, frightened eyes, and a whisper escaped her lips. He's coming to get me." My mind tried to connect the dots. The drawing, the word "daddy," the accusation that he had set the fire. And now, that enigmatic phrase. Who would come to get her? The father, who, according to the drawing, was the arsonist? Or was there something more? I handed the drawing to Captain Almeida, who examined it with an expression of utter bewilderment. This changes everything, Silva," he said quietly. "We need to investigate this thoroughly. This child could be the key to solving a crime." The police were called immediately. The building was still smoking, and forensic teams were already preparing to enter as soon as the area was cleared. I couldn't get the image of that burning "daddy" out of my mind. Who was he? Why would the girl draw him that way? In the following days, the story of the girl and the drawing spread throughout the department. Her name was Anna. Anna was only 6 years old. Investigators tried to talk to her, but the trauma was profound. She barely spoke, only cowered, and when asked about her father, she closed her eyes and repeated the phrase, "He did. He set the fire." No information about her father, nor where he was. Anna's mother, according to neighbors, had moved a few months ago and had no contact. Anna was living with a great-aunt, an 80-year-old woman who, fortunately, had left for a doctor's appointment moments before the fire. The search for this "daddy" began. No name, no whereabouts, just a drawing and a childish accusation. It felt like a needle in a haystack. As forensics worked in the apartment, searching for traces of arson, I couldn't stop thinking about Anna. That image of her father in the drawing disturbed me. He was a dark, ghostly figure. What could a 6-year-old child know about something so terrible? What if she was right? The tension grew with each passing day. With each news item, with each piece of information that was withheld, the mystery deepened. But what no one expected was that the next revelation wouldn't come from a formal investigation, but from something much more unexpected. And that revelation would be even more shocking, capable of shaking the foundations of that story. Weeks passed. Anna was in the care of social services, in a foster home. She remained withdrawn, but little by little, she began interacting with her toys and drawings. I visited her whenever I could, feeling an inexplicable connection with the child I had rescued from the flames. One day, during one of these visits, Anna called me over. Her eyes, though still sad, seemed to have a different glow. She held a new drawing. This time, it wasn't of fire. It was of a park. A park with a swing, a slide, and 2 figures, her and a man with their backs turned. And below, the word, "friend." "That's him," Anna whispered, pointing to the man with his back turned. "He always took me to the park before the fire." My heart raced. Could this be Daddy from the original drawing? I asked who he was, and Anna, in a whisper, said, "The guy who lives in the building." The neighbor. A neighbor. That simple, seemingly insignificant detail gave me a jolt. If Anna's father was out of context, who was Daddy in the first drawing? And who was this friend in the second? A child's mind is complex and full of hidden details. I reported the information to Captain Almeida and the investigators. The idea that Daddy could be a neighbor, not the biological father, opened a new line of investigation. We returned to the building, now in ruins but still under forensic examination. I went to the apartment next to Anna's, 702. It was completely destroyed by fire, but something caught my eye. Amid the rubble, we found a charred wallet. Inside, a document. It belonged to a man named Carlos Eduardo Viana. And a photo. A photo of Carlos with a blonde girl, who looked a lot like Anna, and a woman. The surprise hit me like a punch in the gut. That woman in the photo wasn't Anna's mother. And the girl wasn't Anna. That's when the biggest revelation of all hit me. The forensic examination of Carlos Eduardo's apartment found a container with traces of fire accelerant. And in his diary, amid notes about debts and evictions, were a series of dates marked. Dates that coincided with small fires that had occurred in other buildings in the area in recent months. All of them, small outbreaks, quickly controlled, but which caused panic and evacuation. Carlos Eduardo Viana was not Anna's father. He was a pyromaniac. The daddy Anna drew, he set the fire, was not her biological father, but rather the daddy she saw as the figure responsible for the fire, a neighbor she might have seen prowling the apartment. And the phrase, "he's coming to get me," in the child's mind, could have been a mixture of fear and confusion, associating the neighbor with the traumatic event. The revelation was devastating. Anna's traumatized mind had created a connection between her neighbor and her absent father figure amid the horror of the fire. What seemed like a child's direct accusation was actually a complex web of fear, trauma, and a distorted perception of a terrible reality. The story unfolded in a surprising way. Carlos Eduardo Viana, the cartoon's daddy, wasn't a cruel father, but rather a mentally ill individual who suffered from pyromania and was being evicted from apartment 702. He had set fire to his own apartment to get revenge on the landlord, but the flames spread uncontrollably to Anna's apartment, 703. The notes in his diary revealed a pattern of small fires, an escalation of acts that culminated in the building's tragedy. The photo found in his wallet, with the woman and the blonde girl, was of his own family, who had abandoned him due to his problems. He wasn't a cruel criminal by nature, but rather a victim of his own illness, whose actions had devastating consequences. The discovery that Daddy was not Anna's biological father, but the neighbor with pyromania, was a shock to everyone. Anna's childish mind, seeing the neighbor she feared, perhaps with a lighter, or associating his presence with the heat of a fire, transformed him into the central figure of her nightmare, the daddy who set the fire. It was an innocent interpretation, but it led us to a much more complex and sad truth. What appeared to be a diabolical plan, a father setting fire to his own house, was actually a tragic incident caused by a neighbor's mental illness. But the final plot twist came from elsewhere, from something no one expected. During the investigation, the police discovered that Anna's great-aunt, the 80-year-old woman who had left for her doctor's appointment on the day of the fire, didn't actually have an appointment. She was in the hospital, yes, but visiting her daughter, who was terminally ill. And this daughter was Anna's biological mother, who, before she died, left a letter. A letter for Anna. The letter revealed that Anna was not her great-aunt's biological daughter. She was adopted, and her biological parents had died in a car accident years before. Her great-aunt raised her as her own granddaughter, keeping the truth a secret to protect her. The final plot twist wasn't about the fire or the neighbor. It was about Anna's very identity, about the complexity of her life, about the unconditional love of a woman who adopted and protected her, and about the truth that, even amidst chaos and tragedy, always finds a way to be revealed. The letter from her biological mother, delivered to Anna years later, brought not only the truth about her origins, but also the certainty that love can manifest itself in many ways, even in the most difficult circumstances. Anna finally understood everything. The trauma of the fire was intense, but the truth about its origins, about her great-aunt's love, helped her rebuild her life. The daddy in the drawing was a sick neighbor, not a monster. That fire, which seemed like an act of family cruelty, was actually the culmination of a personal tragedy. Anna overcame her fears, and with the support of professionals, little by little, she returned to being the happy child she was before the incident. This story taught me that behind every tragedy lies a web of emotions, secrets, and hidden truths. That a child's perception can be simultaneously innocent and frightening, revealing layers of a reality that, for us adults, is often incomprehensible. That rescue wasn't just another one. It was a turning point in my life. I saved a girl from the fire, yes. But she, with a simple drawing, showed me that not everything is as it seems, and that the truth, however difficult, always comes to light. Carlos Eduardo Viana's case came to an end. He was admitted to a psychiatric institution for treatment, not as a criminal, but as someone in need of help. Anna's great-aunt, in fragile health, passed away a few months later, but left Anna in the care of a loving family who accepted her with all the love and care she deserved. Anna grew up strong and resilient. She never forgot the firefighter who rescued her, and I never forgot the girl in the drawing. A life. A story. A whole world. And so, life goes on. And I remain on the streets, ready for the next call, knowing that at any moment, the unexpected can happen, and that with every rescue, there's a story to be told, a life to be saved. Because, in the end, saving a life is saving an entire world.